I stood there for a long time, not moving, not breathing, just observing. You'd think in moments like that a person might storm out or confront or shout. But when your chest caves in and your pulse slows, you don't act. You absorb. That's what I did. I absorbed the sight of my wife smiling with a softness I hadn't seen in years. The way she let him guide her without hesitation. The way her fingers trailed along the back of his neck like they had a history I wasn't part of. I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing, that it was just a dance. But it wasn't the dance that hurt. It was how effortless it looked. How she never once turned her head to check if I was watching. I might as well have been wallpaper. People passed by me, strangers with full glasses and easy laughter, and I must have looked insane, frozen there like someone waiting for time to rewind. I remember gripping the edge of a table just to keep my knees from giving out. It was surreal, like I was watching a play where everyone had a script but me. After what felt like an eternity, the music stopped. A brief silence followed, polite applause, the clink of glasses. And still, she stayed in his arms a second too long. Her hand lingered. His lips moved near her ear. She laughed. Quietly. Intimately. She didn't come back to me right away. Instead, she moved to another part of the room with him. No glance in my direction. No explanation. Just gone. Like I wasn't part of the evening at all. That's when something inside me cracked. I left the champagne on the table. I didn't look for my coat. I didn't ask a soul for help. I just walked toward the exit, numb and hollow, my shoes echoing on the tile like a warning bell. The doorman offered me a nod as I passed, and I realized, to the rest of the world, I probably looked like any other man leaving early. But inside, I was collapsing. The air outside was cold. Not freezing, but sharp enough to remind me I was alive. I walked to my car without thinking. I sat in the driver's seat for minutes, staring at the steering wheel, unsure of what to feel first. Anger? Shame? Heartbreak? And then, I heard my phone buzz. It was her. "Where did you go?" the message said. I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But I saw the typing bubble pop up again. "Emory, please. Come back. I didn't mean to upset you." That was the moment I knew. She regretted it. The second I left. But what she didn't understand was that I hadn't just left the building. I had left something far bigger. I had walked away from the version of us that I had been holding on to. And I wasn't sure I could ever walk back. I didn't drive home that night. I parked by the lake instead, the one we used to visit when things were simpler. When we'd sit on the hood of my old car, pass lukewarm coffee back and forth, and talk about ridiculous dreams we knew we'd never chase. Back when her laugh was mine to witness, not something shared with a stranger in a red suit. The engine ticked as it cooled, but I didn't notice. I just stared at the water, hoping it would swallow the image of her head tilted back in someone else's hands. My phone buzzed again. Then again. 10 missed calls. 1 voicemail. I played it. Her voice, urgent but measured, like someone caught, but not quite sorry. "Emory, hey, please call me." That wasn't what it looked like. I didn't know he'd be there, I swear. I didn't even plan to dance. He just pulled me in, and I didn't want to make a scene. That's all it was. A stupid moment. "Just come back, okay?" I listened twice. Not because I needed clarity, but because I was dissecting her tone. There was no panic in it. No guilt. Just a performance. Smooth, too smooth. I knew that voice. It was the one she used with clients. Polished, calm, emotionally distant. Like she'd written the words down before calling. That's when it hit me. It wasn't the dance. It wasn't the hand on her back or the slow twirl or the champagne bubbles catching the light in her glass. It was the shift in her eyes. That was the part that haunted me. The way her gaze softened for him. The way her expression changed, relaxed, even. Like she had finally let go of something heavy. And maybe that something was me. We'd been drifting for months. I kept thinking it was work, or the kids, or just time doing what time does. But now, I realized it was her heart. She had already left long before I did. She'd packed up her emotions, moved them into another man's arms, and forgot to send me the memo. I didn't respond to the voicemail. Instead, I drove to my brother Amos' place, a quiet guy, lives alone, works nights at the local data center. I knew he'd be asleep, but I had a spare key. I let myself in, crashed on his couch, and stared at the ceiling fan until my eyes gave out. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, it wasn't rest. It was memory. Her laugh. Her lies. Her feet moving in rhythm with someone else's heartbeat. By morning, I had 10 new messages. But one of them wasn't from Darla. It was from her sister. And it changed everything. I wasn't expecting her sister to reach out. Eileen and I had never been close. Polite hellos at holidays, occasional texts about family things. But that was it. So when her name lit up on my screen at 6:47 a.m., my first thought wasn't suspicion. It was confusion. Can we talk? Call me. It's important. That was the whole message. No emojis. No tone. Just words, heavy and cold like a stone in your shoe. I sat with it for a while. I didn't call right away. Instead, I made a cup of whatever old coffee Amos had buried in the cabinet, sat back on his uncomfortable futon, and watched the steam rise. The city outside was still half asleep, but inside me something had already awakened, a strange stillness. Not peace. Not anger. Just quiet clarity. I dialed. She answered on the second ring. Hey, you okay? She asked, but it wasn't casual. It was the kind of you okay someone says when they already know you're not. I've been better. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, very carefully. I was at the gala too. That pulled my spine straight. I wasn't supposed to be there. I came with a friend, just to support the fundraiser. I didn't know you and Darla would be there until I saw you by the fountain. She paused. I could hear her breathing shift, like she was choosing her words too precisely. I saw them dancing. I saw how she looked at him. I didn't interrupt. I couldn't. My hands were cold, even though the room was warm. She continued. Emory, I need to tell you something. I wasn't sure if it was my place. But now I'm sure. The man she danced with, his name is Thad Caro. He wasn't just someone from college. The name meant nothing to me. He's not just an old friend. He's been around. Quietly. For months. I don't know everything, but they've been meeting. In places they think no one would notice. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to start trouble. But after what I saw last night, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I didn't thank her. Not because I didn't appreciate it. I just couldn't find my voice. My mouth was dry. My jaw clenched too tightly. I felt like I was listening to the end of a story I didn't even know I was part of. I think she's fallen for him, Emory. That was the last thing she said before we both hung up. And in that moment, something strange happened. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or break anything or call Darla demanding answers. No, I just stood in Amos' quiet apartment, staring at the blank wall, and whispered to myself. She made me invisible long before the dance. I didn't go home that day. Or the next. The door to our house was still there, 3 turns off the main road, past the dry creek and the mailbox shaped like a trout. But I didn't want to open it. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find inside, but because I already knew. The home we'd built wasn't mine anymore. I stayed at Amos's place, though he didn't ask questions. He's the kind of person who sees everything but says nothing. The silence was generous. I spent the days doing nothing, not sleeping, not eating much, just watching the dust settle on furniture that wasn't mine. My phone stayed off for most of it. When I finally turned it on, it buzzed like it was choking on everything it had held back. Missed calls, mostly from Darla. A few voice messages. One video. I didn't open any of it. Because deep down, I understood, there's no version of her voice that could undo what I saw. But on the third night, I made a mistake. I drove by the house. It was stupid. I don't know what I expected to see. Maybe nothing. Maybe some strange comfort in confirming that the world hadn't rearranged itself entirely. But as I slowed near the driveway, headlights off, I noticed one thing that knocked the air out of me. The porch light was on. It shouldn't have been. We never left it on unless one of us was out late, unless someone was waiting. It wasn't a big thing. Not a dramatic twist. Just a small, silent detail that said more than words ever could. She was waiting. Or pretending to. Or maybe she just didn't want to face the dark alone. I sat there in the car for 20 minutes. Watching. Nothing happened. No movement behind the windows. No silhouette in the hall. Just light. Soft, warm, painfully familiar. And suddenly, I remembered something she once told me, years ago, after a fight. We were younger then, and our problems were smaller. I don't like darkness at the door, she said. It makes me feel like I don't belong. At the time, I thought it was poetic. I remember going out that night and buying a motion sensor bulb, just to make sure she'd always see light when she came home. But now the light felt like mockery. Because I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel anything. I drove away without ever stopping the engine. The next morning, I sent her a message. Just one sentence. I saw the light on. She replied almost instantly. Then why didn't you come in? And I stared at the screen, not typing, not breathing. Because the real answer? I didn't know who lived there anymore. I drove west without thinking. No destination, no bag, no plan, just a half tank of gas and a name in my head I hadn't spoken aloud in years. Not hers. Mine. Emory. That's what my driver's license still says. That's what the bank sees, what the tax forms echo back. But somewhere between the anniversary dinners, the mortgage refinancing, the endless beige weekends, I stopped recognizing it. So I went to the last place that remembered who I was. The town where I grew up. Galeswood isn't on most maps. A gas station, 2 diners, a chapel with a leaky roof. The kind of town that always feels like it's apologizing for its own existence. But for me, it held something precious, not joy, exactly, but clarity. And a front porch that used to be mine. The old house was still there. Peeling paint, sun-warped fence. Same wind chimes on the porch, dull and slow. I parked across the street and didn't move for a long while. A woman in her 70s sat in the rocking chair now, not my mother, of course. She passed 7 years ago. I don't know who this woman was, but she looked at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. I didn't introduce myself. I just nodded, turned back to the car, and drove 2 blocks over to the old baseball field. Grass had grown up through the bleachers. The dugout was covered in graffiti, but the dirt smelled the same. And the silence, that old Galewood silence, was louder than any answer Darla ever gave me. I sat on the grass. Shoes off. Phone dead. For once, I wasn't anyone's husband. I wasn't a man trying to decode glances at a gala. I wasn't a story she could explain away later. I was just a boy again, afraid of nothing except striking out. I thought about the porch light again, and suddenly it all made sense. She wasn't waiting for me. She was leaving it on for someone else. Maybe not that night. Maybe not even on purpose. But deep down, I realized, people don't leave lights on for those they've already made invisible. I got up slowly, as the sun slipped behind the ridge, painting the field in that hazy orange that never lasts long. Dust on my hands. Gravel in my socks. But for the first time in days, I felt something unfamiliar. Not peace. Not pain. Just readiness. For what? I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't stay in the past anymore. And I sure as hell couldn't go back to pretending. I came home on a Wednesday. No warning, no keys jangling in the door, no suitcase. Just me, a man who used to live here. The street looked smaller. Or maybe I looked bigger, not in size, but in something else. Like grief had stretched me out from the inside. The front steps creaked like they always had. The porch light was off this time. Maybe she'd stopped waiting. Maybe she never started. Either way, it didn't matter. I already knew what I was walking into. The door wasn't locked. The living room smelled like citrus and laundry, like someone had tried to make it feel fresh again. Like scent could scrub away silence. There were new throw pillows on the couch. A forgotten coffee cup sat cold on the table. A pair of shoes I didn't recognize waited neatly by the coat rack. She was in the kitchen. Not cooking. Not crying. Just standing there, holding the edge of the sink like it was the only thing anchoring her. She didn't say my name. Didn't rush over. Just blinked and whispered. You came back. I didn't answer. I looked around the room instead. At the place we used to laugh. At the photos on the wall that still held our frozen smiles, even though the people behind them had long disappeared. There was no argument. No accusations. Just the sound of the fridge humming and her hands trembling slightly. I didn't mean to make you feel like. She started. I raised my hand. Not to silence her, but to let her know I didn't want to hear the script. Not tonight. There's a room upstairs, I said. The one we never finished. She nodded slowly. She knew the one, the half-painted guest room with no furniture, just boxes and shadows. The room we always said we'd figure out when we had time. A forgotten corner of the house, suspended in almost. I need to sit there, I told her. Alone. And then I walked upstairs. The door opened with a sigh. The floor gave under my weight. There was dust, and a rolled-up rug, and a mirror turned toward the wall. I sat on a box labeled winter coats and stared at nothing. It was the quietest room in the house. That's why I picked it. I sat there for 2 hours. Maybe 3. No clock. No phone. Just the walls and my heartbeat. It was the only place that hadn't lied to me yet. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't processing. I was pausing. Because sometimes, before you can make a decision, you have to sit with your ruins. You have to feel every crack in the foundation, trace every splinter, breathe the dust. Only then can you ask the real question. What still belongs to me here? The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't open my email or return calls. I sat in the room with no name, upstairs, where time felt reluctant to move. The window had a crack in the corner of the glass, not enough to break, just enough to distort the view. Outside, the street looked unfamiliar. Same cars, same trees. But through that crack, everything bent just slightly wrong. I liked it that way. Downstairs, I could hear her. Footsteps. The kettle. Cabinets opening. Then silence again. That was our rhythm now, a language of sounds we didn't speak to each other. At noon, she knocked. Not a loud knock. Just a polite little tap. Like I was a guest. "Can I come in?" she asked. I didn't answer. She opened the door anyway. She didn't wear makeup. She wasn't dressed up. Just a sweatshirt, one of mine, I think, and bare feet. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not because she was weak, but because I had finally stepped out of the version of her I used to protect. She didn't sit. She didn't cry. "There wasn't a plan," she said quietly. "That night, the dance. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I let the silence stay between us like a third person in the room. He wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't think you'd notice anything." That one landed like a slow punch. I didn't think you'd notice anything. The kind of sentence that only slips out when the truth forgets to stay hidden. I stood, walked to the window, pressed my hand against the cool pane. And then, not turning around, I said, "What else haven't I noticed?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, it was a whisper. "Too much." That was the only honest sentence she had left. I nodded. Not in agreement. Just acknowledgement. Then I said the thing I'd been holding since the gala. Not loud. Not bitter. Just quiet. "You didn't lose me the moment you danced with him. You lost me the moment it didn't feel like betrayal to you." She closed her eyes. Like that hurt more than yelling ever could. And then she left the room. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Just left. And I stayed. In the quietest room of a house that had stopped being home. I left the house 2 days later. No shouting. No bags thrown down the stairs. No final argument. Just a suitcase, packed slowly, and a note on the kitchen table that said only, "I need to find myself somewhere I haven't already disappeared." There wasn't anything left to say. I rented a small studio on the edge of town. One room, big window, no hallway. I didn't need more. I bought a used couch. I started cooking my own meals again, badly at first, then better. I started jogging, just a mile or two at dawn, through a park I forgot existed. No music in my ears. Just birds. Breath. The sound of my shoes against pavement. And slowly, something started to come back. Not love. Not trust. Something quieter. Something simpler. Me. I thought healing would feel like fire, like burning it all down to begin again. But it wasn't. It was a gentle thing. A quiet rearranging of furniture in my soul. I started noticing colors again. The way late sunlight hit the walls. How silence could feel peaceful instead of punishing. One morning, I got a letter. Not from her. From myself. It was a page I'd written years ago and tucked into an old book, a note to my future self, scrawled in a mess of doubt and hope. "Don't forget who you were before someone else's needs replaced your own." I laughed when I read it. Because I finally understood. I hadn't lost everything. I'd returned to something. Weeks passed. Then months. I saw her once, at a grocery store. We didn't speak. She looked fine. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel regret. I just nodded. She nodded back. That was all. Some endings don't need punctuation. Just space. No? Now I wake up and stretch and open the window before coffee. I write sometimes. Nothing fancy. Just thoughts. Memories. Hopes. I don't know what's next. I'm okay not knowing. Because in a world full of people shouting their pain, I found a quieter truth. I didn't have to rebuild what we had. I only had to build something that felt like home again, even if it only had one chair. And that's exactly what I've done.